Join us and our friends as we fall down the rabbit hole of security wonder. If you're ready to see how deep it goes, you've found the right place. Pour your tea. You're not late for office hours. And now, our Red Queen, Tara Wheeler.
Hello and welcome back to another week of Cybersecurity Office Hours with Red Queen and friends. And tea there is this week, my friends. So how's it going, everybody? What's up, Jones? What's up, James?
Hey, happy Thursday, everybody.
Yeah, oh, God.
Great.
Oh, God. So yeah, it's been a busy week, but there's some particularly confusing elements out there for small businesses. And I know what just happened. You know what I did? I left my YouTube on in a different window, and so now I can hear myself echoing, and it's freaking killing me. Oh no, it was one of you guys. Cool. So we see some regulatory freezes that happened this week. We're going to talk about those. But I think the real news that's on everybody's minds this week is the PowerSchool hack. So, and I think James and Jones, you've both taken a good, hard, long look into that one right there. Other than, holding my little MFA sign, I mean, beating that drum until it pops. So what's going on with all of this? And what was the new news from that hacker?
Yeah. So the attacker who pulled this off, they are claiming to have stolen 62 million student and almost 10 million teacher records, like their personal data, social security numbers, all that stuff. Interesting, today I'm at a co-working space and somebody mentioned to me or asked me about it, and I said, yeah, we've been tracking this, and they're like, yeah, our school district has it, but we haven't got any word back from them. So although at least there's now starting to kind of provide some breakdowns with which school board or school districts. So there's an article here that mentions how the Toronto school board, there's about almost 1.5 million students impacted, and the numbers don't look great. So if your kid is is fairly young, you can maybe celebrate their first data breach. They get their first little bit of credit monitoring. It's the birthday gift every kid wants.
Credit monitoring. We talked about this a couple of times over the holidays too, Jones. Is like credit monitoring. What's credit monitoring going to do for an 8-year-old, right?
Yeah.
What I'm deeply concerned about is that those records are not just educational records, because educational records aren't just educational records anymore. It's not like they found out that I got a C in biology, right? The real issue is that this includes information like special accommodations, individual education plans, medical notes, the kind of information that a doctor might give a school about kids. This is information that by rights should absolutely be left at under the age of 18, right? On a lot of levels, I used to hear such utter bullshit about how something would go on my permanent record. As a person who's dropped out of and gotten kicked out of, I think, 3 high schools, horseshit. But here's the problem. On a lot of levels, does this data breach constitute, for the first time, a real permanent record for these kids?
Well, I think, one of the maybe silver linings here is yet again another article states that the FAQ provided by PowerSchool says that they paid the ransom and watched a video of the threat actor deleting the data. So maybe this is much ado about nothing. Of course, tongue in cheek, being facetious here, but I still am incredulous that this continues to be a narrative. A piece of this narrative is that we paid a ransom, they deleted it, ergo everybody's good to go. Obviously much to be anticipated and seen there, whether this data ends up in a dump or ends up being sold somewhere, and only time will tell that. But this is the kind of messaging that is really dangerous, because I think it gives people, some of these parents that are just not technical, a potentially false sense of security that
Yep.
that something proactive was done on their behalf here. And I just think that's really irresponsible, to trust somebody that stole all of this data to just take their word that they deleted it. There's not other copies, and that this ransom was useful.
Yeah, we're also calling this person a hacker. That's not a hacker. That's a computer criminal. I mean, hacking is not a crime. It's a survival trait, right? So the question here is, why would you trust somebody that is acting in this fashion? Now, we've seen the professionalization, I think, of a lot of cybercrime over the course of the last, especially 5 years. You got customer service departments now for APTs, but this doesn't have that feel to me. Does this have that feel to you?
No, not at all. No, this feels like a good old smash and grab. Exactly
Really?
what I think it is.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
think it feels exactly like that. Yeah. And, the two of you have kids in school and like in and around that age. I don't know if you want to reveal this, but I think at least half of the parents I know have been complaining about the fact that they got data breach notifications.
Yeah, we didn't. I was looking at the list that's been published of the schools that have been identified, and they're all over the place. But so far, not in anywhere near me or my kids yet, from what I've seen. So, James, I don't know if you're in a similar boat or not.
Yeah, we actually use a different platform that previously had been compromised years ago. So there's that.
Duh. I mean, they learned their lesson, right?
Of course.
They've been told once. No, that's at least part of the problem, I think, in this case is we understand, I think, that the breach was caused by a customer support portal that was not equipped with multi-factor authentication. I'm getting kind of sick of this. I'm going to be straight with you. I'm getting kind of sick of this at this point. Single points of failure should be something like CrowdStrike taking out your global logistics network because Delta goes down, right? That's like a respectable Viking style single point of failure. This is a dumb point of failure. It is just a dumb one. Yeah, exactly. Like if it can't take down a global fleet of airplanes, it's not a proper, it was a terrible single point of failure. But at the same time, like this is not a single point of failure. This is multi points of failure, right? So it's really problematic, I think, to have this be the answer to why this happened to everybody.
Yeah, and I think this is obviously going to be a very big and continuing story, because now there are dozens of lawsuits that are being filed against PowerSchool. And I think there's a lot of merit to these, and unfortunately, somebody's going to have to be made an example of for everybody else to get in line, to get their security in line for software that has massive reach like this. So it'll be interesting to see how these lawsuits pan out, and obviously does not look good for PowerSchool. I don't know the answer to this, but I will make a speculation that they do not have the insurance coverage to defend themselves here. So,
oh God, no. Well, this isn't cyber insurance. This is for what's going on. This is absolutely errors and omissions, right? Like this is professional liability insurance. This isn't a cyber. When you haven't done the most basic stuff, the question here, like you don't get to make a claim against a burglary policy on your home insurance if you have left the doors open everywhere, left the house, and there's jewelry hanging out in the middle of the living room floor with a giant neon sign saying out gone fishing. Right? Like, yes, did somebody commit a crime? Sure. But I think that there's a lot of reason to think that insurance companies are going to have a very serious time. They're going to have a really hard time, I think, paying out on this one, because it's so clear that this seems like it was negligence.
I agree with you. And I think given all of the, again, I think I made this comment on a live webcast here in the last couple of weeks. Insurance carriers, cyber insurance carriers, the business insurance carriers, these are the same companies that are now paying for houses in Malibu and all of these other things. And if they have even an inkling of a reason to tell PowerSchool to pound sand and that they're not going to pay out, they are absolutely going to take it, right? And I think PowerSchool has left themselves really open here. Again, I don't know much about the company. I suspect that pretty soon you'll see a CISO getting fired if they have one, because that is the usual course of events here. And again, I can't say that would be out of line if they were really proved to be at fault here for something as stupid as not implementing MFA properly and across the board.
I don't think it's the CISO that needs to get fired on this one. I think it's the CEO.
Fair enough. It's usually that ends up eating it, unfortunately. But I think you're right. Maybe they have a board, and the board will, ultimately hold the CEO accountable. But it's usually the CISO that gets the axe in the back on these.
What do you think should happen, James?
I mean, we all know that security culture or any culture starts from the top. So if you're if you are allowing this kind of lackadaisical security, yeah, you probably should be ousted, and the and I mean, the CISO probably is going to go as well, and maybe justified. But I do think that this is probably, for a company like PowerSchool, this is probably the worst thing that could happen to their company. And so I kind of liken it to, if you're the captain of a ship, and even if you're sleeping and you bump into another boat in the middle of the night, you're probably going to lose your command, along with a whole bunch of other people, because there was a culture, lack of awareness, whatever. So I think that's there. And something that I was actually trying to look at too is, does this how does this go in relation to like FERPA?
Right.
Is there an enforcement mechanism that would maybe put some teeth to any kind of penalties for PowerSchool?
I don't know that there is, and at least part of that is there's a difference between being secure and being compliant. There genuinely is, and a lot of people have asked me, is the Delta lawsuit against CrowdStrike going to succeed? And my answer to that is CrowdStrike was very probably in compliance with all of their contracts, and it's very difficult to prove malfeasance if you are compliant, right? So the chances are pretty good that there was a compensating control in place, that the workstations which didn't have multi-factor authentication enabled on them were accepted or were compliant. And when I say accepted, I mean see, exactly. So this is a situation where it's very unlikely that on paper PowerSchool did anything wrong. It is extraordinarily likely that they did a bunch of stuff that was stupid and problematic in security and was not following industry best practices. Just like CrowdStrike wasn't following industry best practices when it had one engineer, launch a content update without going through appropriate test, right? Like, is that's not industry best practice, but it's probably compliant with whatever they were set up to look at in the moment. That's kind of the challenge that we've got here. And as a result, it's the little schools that are facing just an unbelievable disaster for small, for tinier communities. Who's going to assist them in this kind of cleanup, right? If you've got one person that has access to this data and you're in a 10,000 person small town in the middle of the United States, all of a sudden, with the information about every single student there, their ADHD diagnoses, their behavioral issues, their medical issues, problems with parents, their food allergies, the grades that they got. What would a parent do to prevent all of that information from getting to a college, right? Yep. This is the best blackmail trove I've ever seen. Maybe ever. I mean, the equivalent might have been the Sony hack in 2014 with all of those executives. And that was simply because you could have gotten more money individually from all of those rich people. Can you think of a better blackmail trove than this? 62 million students, their grades, all of it. It's insane to me.
Yeah, and I was saying last week that this is also associated, with an address and things that will persist for a very long time as well, as these students are unlikely to move, year to year. A lot of them will stay put, which means this data will stay relevant for quite a while. And so I think really, we have yet to see the scope and breadth of the real impact of this, and we won't for quite a while. And it'll be really unfortunate in the coming years as people find more creative uses for how to use things like this to their advantage.
I absolutely agree, and I'm distressed at it, and at the same time, I guess I'm not surprised at it at this point. We've got to start getting to a position where we're expecting more from people that are protecting children, right? If this was meat space, having a security setup for a school that permitted wild dogs and sexual predators in because they followed the lines of their contract would still end up having that security firm dismissed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if that doesn't happen in a case like this, we've got something broken in the understanding of how we're treating kids' data, right? That's really distressing. So I want to see some real corrective action there. Pretty much, you got to lop that problem off at the top. And if a CEO was perfectly fine letting this go on, outsourcing or de-staffing or decreasing the level at which they were hiring at the IT level for protecting all these students' data, that sounds like a decision that needs to be handled with their board. I have very little sympathy for it, right? So, I mean, if I took, I don't even have access to customer data as is right and good and proper inside Red Queen Dynamics. Like I would have to go through my own head of infrastructure and request appropriate permissions and log, right? But if I had access to that data and I was mucking about at a Starbucks on public Wi-Fi and somebody yoinked the entire thing, I would deserve to get fired, right? This is what we're talking about here. So you should not have this, and that's access from the top. In the exact same kind of way, if I made it trivially easy for any digital marketing contractor we've brought aboard to access customer data in this exact same kind of way, I would also be the person in trouble ultimately. So I think there's some buck stops here, real questions that need to start getting asked there. Anyway, so why is this impacting MSPs and small businesses? Because they're the ones who are dealing with local schools. As I have been made very, very, very aware, schools are not a federal thing. They are state, they're local, they're county-based often. So you'll have city schools, you'll have county schools, you'll have state schools. Most of the ones that we're talking about here that are going to struggle with a lot of remediation are going to be county schools, right? They're going to be schools that are in district levels across a state, which may also match up to a piece of a city and a piece of a county. So there's real problems there with figuring out not only who's responsible, but where money comes from to remediate situations like this. It's really common for these schools to have an external IT provider that can come in and fill in the gaps, right? Like James, I know some of your clients are in the educational space. We've got other MSPs and MSSPs that their clients are in that educational space. They have like a school district or a cluster of schools in a geography, right? What's the best advice that you can provide for people right now as they're dealing with something like this, besides the obvious watch out for the absolutely sparkling new phishing techniques that are about to come out on this one?
I mean, oh gosh, where do we even start? Like, I mean, I think, I think one thing is like, okay, being aware of what has happened. So, you've gotten your notification, your child's information's out, your information's out, whatever. Try to keep that, in your mind so that if you do see a change in how you're approached via email, how you're approached in other ways, um, you know, uh, maybe add an extra level of kind of distrust or discernment or whatever is going to help keep you safe. I know Rachel Toback always says, take a beat. And I think in some cases when you realize that you're being targeted, maybe take two beats and kind of think that through before going forward. And from a helping MSPs and trying to deal with that, you really can't ratchet up your your email settings much more than are already there. You can maybe designate more people as impersonation risks, but if everyone's an impersonation risk, then it doesn't really matter. It's kind of a losing effort to try to set those things up. So
Yeah. Yeah, I love that advice. And it's one of the biggest pieces of advice that I give people, that I give my own family, that I give our clients, that I give everybody, which is if someone wants you to do something quickly, don't. Just don't. There is no reason to ever do anything quickly. Even if that means take a minute, talk to the difference between doing something quickly and not might simply be the difference between saying, hey, I'm going to need to get back to you. It's going to be 120 seconds and call literally anyone to find out if this makes sense. That could be the equivalent of taking time. If there's something that needs to get done in under 120 seconds, then it probably isn't your problem, or it probably can't be fixed anyway. So that's the real challenge. Like a 2-minute rule on this one kind of makes sense. Just think about it, right? If you're under stress, that 2-minute rule feels like the end of the fourth quarter in any NFL game, right? It's going to take 27 minutes to do 2 minutes of activity. And that's the moment to take. Maybe. Is there better advice on that one? Just, it's very prescriptive. Like if you think somebody wants you to do something fast, don't break the connection, find it, do an off-channel version of the contact back with them again. If somebody calls you up, say, I'll call you back, and do it on a different channel. Call someone else and find out if it makes any sense. Like, it can take just a minute to do that, and it might save you a lot of money, right? That's one of the suggestions, by the way, that we give people. One of the questions that we ask in Red Queen Dynamics in your weekly questions that your employees will get is there more than two people? Is there more than one person required to do a wire transfer of $25,000 or more out of your company bank accounts? Now, that doesn't sound like a cybersecurity question, but it is actually one of the top 6 questions on every single cyber insurance questionnaire we've ever seen. Because to cyber insurers, the ability to prevent wire fraud is a cyber attack prevention mechanism. So we ask that question, and some of the suggested resources we give are, if somebody is asking you to do a wire transfer, break that connection and switch to a different channel to speak to them. And like, ensure that you're actually speaking to the correct person. Make sure that you've got the 2 people on the phone and that you've confirmed that other person's identity, right? It's growing more and more common to have this be the case, that you could be on a call with somebody and they're not real. Are you real, James Jones? Just checking. You haven't bought an AI avatar that I'm hanging out with on the internet, have you?
They don't make look okay.
Yeah. They don't make them this ugly. Yeah, there you go. Real hands.
Real
Do we have, was it like 7 fingers or something like that on one hand? Like, oh, okay.
This is going to be the new norm, is everybody has to like do
Show me
this
your
in a
hands.
meeting to make sure all the fingers work. Yeah.
Actually, that's a great idea. See, that's funny, right? Like, there's such a simple way to find out if this can work or not. Is computers can't generate hands that well in that quickly.
Yeah, hands are still a problem for whatever reason.
Keep it that way.
Let's keep it that way. I find that so funny. I think in classical art, drawing a human hand is still one of the hardest problems, which is really, really interesting to me. Like, just a human with a pencil, right? I don't know a great deal about it, and I am no great artist. Ask anybody. I can't even draw stick figures. But I think that's really interesting, that what humans find difficult, these machines also find difficult. That a hand is so difficult to perceive and convey, and yet we managed to do. You would be able to convey the accuracy of a hand more effectively with like a stick figure, little 5-pointed circle, on a person on a call like this. That would more accurately convey the concept of a hand than 7 fingers of flesh tone that look like this. Ew, that's so creepy. Which, that's again another tip for people who are watching something like this. This is a way to prevent wire fraud.
Although my awful brain automatically goes to polydactyl people, 6 fingers, people with extra digits and stuff, and that would immediately cause problems, biometric problems.
Dude, that's so cool. Yeah, I had a polydactylic kitten.
Yeah,
That's pretty fun. Yeah,
Hemingway cat, yeah.
That's so awesome. Yeah, they're happy little kittens, and they're very sought after, which is so interesting to me. I had polydactylic kittens once upon a time, and here is an interesting thing. For those of you who want to read about 2 guys making a bunch of women's trauma all about them, I'm reading the new Emily Wilson translation of the Iliad right now. This is 2023 version of it. It's kind of great, very on point, right? Like Achilles and Agamemnon, like, no, your face, no, your mom's face, basically, for like 3 books, right? And stop taking away all of my ladies. I will take away your ladies. Well, I don't want you to take away my ladies. I've taken away your ladies. Like, this is the whole freaking anyway. So the original meter for the Iliad and Odyssey was a dactylic hexameter. Dactylic hexameter is the original heroic meter, and I found out why actually in Emily Wilson's introduction, which is a dactyl is one long and two short, like a finger. Right? There's a long knuckle and two short knuckle. That's why they call it dactylic hexameter, because it's da 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 da. It's so interesting. Anyway, like side note, she actually translated the whole thing and put it into iambic pentameter because of the tradition in English of rendering our classic literatures in iambic pentameter, thanks to Shakespeare's sonnets. It's a long story, but this is what I have to do to relax from a day of dealing with Power School. So that polydactylic question is going to be an interesting one for a while, and I wonder if an AI could understand why we go from dactylic hexameter to iambic pentameter. That'd be really interesting to me. We'll see what happens with this entire world of AI. But remember to ask for passcodes from your family and friends. If you don't know what else to do, you definitely have a way to exchange a word that the other person can repeat back to you or share that in advance. There you go.
Well, that's funny. It just came up in something I was reading the other day, where somebody was trying to authenticate across a phone with a family member, and it was, what's our passphrase or whatever. And I actually do not have one presently, but I think I am going to go ahead and implement it because I think it's actually a really great idea. And now it's come up like twice in a week, and I think that's telling me I need to go do it for myself.
Yeah.
I think it's probably a really good idea. I and my family, we've got a word which we used from our childhood. Now I'm getting them set up on, 1Password, and like, look, everybody, the password is going to be in 1Password for my family. You want to try to go get it? You can crack 1Password. My problem isn't financial fraud anymore, right? Like, that's threat modeling. But the ability to go and validate that is really important, I think. And I think for family and friends right now, and people who are affected by the Power School breach, as well as every other breach we're looking at right now, a lot of deeply personal information just got shared about underage kids, which means you're going to have people calling you up to pay unpaid medical bills from a visit they know you had last July for an ADHD evaluation for junior. Okay. So when people call you up and want you to give them money over the phone, never give them money over the phone. And I don't care what it is, ask for the online portal for payment. And if they say, I can't give that to you, or it's down, then you've got a problem. And if they try to read off a URL to you, say, no, just making sure that it's available online. Can you give me the account number or something like that? Go to the actual site of the place that you have to pay the bill and look there. Never. And I love it. This suggestion is actually a pretty good one right here. Demand the bill in the mail. Telling me mail the bill. Now you can actually get some snail mail fishes now, believe it or not. I've seen a couple of pretty good examples lately. Have you seen a couple of examples of those lately, Jones? I feel like we've talked more and more about this lately.
I have not seen them personally. I've not received them, but I'm aware of them. I've actually heard of this, and a lot of it does target older people. Because there are still the generations that are more used to dealing with snail mail or physical mail and not email. So, I do see that sometimes. And I think it's, again, man, it just comes down to like psychology of, really understanding the psychology of the person you're trying to target. And, older folks, our older generations are, I think, have never really had the concept of physical phishing mail, right? And so they inherently trust things that are given to them in envelopes. And this is just a de facto weakness in that generation. Now you come to my generation and younger. I recently stopped. I needed stamps. I happened to be at a large, gas station chain, and I just, on the off chance that they sold stamps, I asked, and the young lady behind the register didn't know what a stamp was. And she's
I'm
like,
sorry. Okay.
physically
Okay.
did what they were, and I was
Crumbles into dust off screen.
I was like, oh shit! Like this is where we're at. Stamps are,
Yeah.
like we don't know what those are. So that's it's really interesting.
Yeah, here's what I would do if I was evil. Dear all MSPs, MSSPs, school districts, small businesses, here's what I would do if I was evil. I would grab a form version of any United Healthcare or Blue Cross Blue Shield bill payment looking thing. And with the confirmation that I knew the time, the date, the information about Junior's appointment, I would prep and send out literally bulk mail 10,000 bills to 10,000 different people for their kids about 6 months ago for a small amount, say $35 additional copay, right?
Yeah.
You can't tell me I wouldn't clear $500,000 on that, right?
Doing it through the
Make
mail.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe 100,000 people. Yeah, absolutely.
That
Do it through the mail.
That attack works on businesses. I have seen businesses that get got by that, where somebody creates a fictional power company or sends a bill for $10,000 to to Microsoft as an example, and it's for some power bill somewhere, and they just pay it and go about the day. So I think that's really effective and super evil. So yeah, these are the types of things that I think, are going to be reported in the news in the next 14, 24, 36 months. And
Agreed.
It'll be a whole trove of 62 million people, that are getting got by stuff like this.
I think the one thing though, that if these attackers are trying to move from digital phishing into meat space phishing with sending letters and whatnot.
Yeah, mail fraud.
Right. Just going back to good old mail fraud. I think the thing that's going to get missed by a lot of them, probably because they're not from here, is that the Postal Service investigators are not. They're no slouches. Like I would actually want to make the Avengers mad before I would want to make the Postal Service mad. So, so that kind of, that part could kind of get nipped in the bud really quick if the Postal Service is like, oh hey, new bunch of people don't know about us. Time to learn.
Mm-hmm.
They have gun carrying, badge toting employees. So yes.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, my dad's retired from the post office. You'd be surprised at how many people used to be spies in East Berlin who ended up in the Postal Service. So it's public, right? Like there's a lot of veteran turnover into the Postal Service for mail carrying. There's a lot of people that are very serious, and that's part of, like, at the top level, that's part of the SES, the Special Executive Service. Like, these people do not mess with the Postal Service. So it's super fascinating, I think. And I'm really glad that we can think of these things. And I hope that's immunizing people a little tiny bit to what's going to happen in future. Because like if somebody sends me a $35 bill, like, oops, we made a little tiny mistake on one of the 401k billings in Delaware or something like that. Please pay this to the official state representative of what the heck ever. Is my time worth figuring out if that $35 is legit or not, if I've got to get on multiple different 2-hour phone calls to something in the state of Delaware? That's why these kinds of fishes are so effective. But mail fraud. Anyway, so I definitely wanted to, Jones, you had something that you wanted to bring up today that was really, really interesting, which is this is about record mitigation by Cloudflare. Super interesting.
Yeah. So this news comes out every couple of months. They set a new record, and so this is actually from October of 2024, but they just kind of recently announced that Cloudflare blocked the largest known DDoS attack, which was a sustained 5.6 terabits per second for 80 seconds against 13,000 IPs. Yeah, so that is just an unfathomable amount of data. And I think one of the stories I was reading claims that the entire Cloudflare network is something like 35 terabits per second. So this was a significant percentage of the traffic coming through the network. So this was part of the Mirai botnet, which continues to be quite a prevalent source of these. So, but 80 seconds, 5.6 terabits per second, just an absolute monster attack.
Mirai botnet, just going back to the classics here, folks, that would be September of 2016. And that is for unupdated ARM devices as part of default Linux configuration, if I recall correctly, and devices like nanny cams, surveillance cameras, things like that are done up in a lot of IoT stuff right there. So just in case anybody's wondering if it matters to change your default password, yes. Should there be such a thing as a default password? No. Are we going to solve that problem anytime soon? Looking at Tuesday, I'm thinking no. So I think there's a real possibility that we're only going to see that trail away with attrition. And it's mind-blowing that it seems like it's gotten stronger. Because I know that DDoS attack was not nearing 6 terabits a second in 2016, because I don't think that any of the relevant networks had the capacity to handle that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and they
it DOSed. It did the DOSing.
Well, because I think that 2016 attack, when it took down like most of Twitter and a bunch of other stuff, the belief is that was like almost like a weapons test. Whoever had control of the botnet wanted to show somebody its capability. So it wasn't even, the motive wasn't financial or anything. It was just, hey, you want to see what this thing can do? Mm-hmm. And they flipped the switch. This is, Nico asks, how do the attacks get mitigated? I mean, the devices just have to start breaking and, not getting replaced, because nobody is actually checking their smart crock pot for, Mirai botnet stuff or anything like that. It's the internet of shit. I mean, things, whatever.
It is absolutely the internet of shit at this point, and we'll see what happens over the coming weeks and months. But this is relevant for MSPs and MSSPs who are starting to look at how do they handle traffic. Fortunately, most of the cloud providers, they're assisting their clients to get onto for web services. Like if you're getting onto whatever it is, doesn't matter, Shopify, Wix, any of the sites, Squarespace, anything that is cloud handled, it's beyond the purview of the smaller businesses that you're dealing with. However, you often have to explain what those things are in compliance paperwork, especially if you're dealing with something like CMMC, because if you're routing traffic through anything that you're not controlling, you have to explain what that looks like. So be aware of what that setup looks like. And there are certain providers that are already like top FedRAMP. I believe Cloudflare is top FedRAMP. There's only, again, like we've said before, only like 570 top FedRAMP companies in the country. So like getting to FedRAMP is like real FedRAMP all the way. You pretty much have to have tens of millions of dollars to spend it at every single year to stay there, because you're servicing government contracts, you're staying up to date. You've got an entire team whose job it is just track all this down and stay up to date with it. This is beyond the reach and beyond the ken of most of the small businesses that are kind of in the conversation we're having here. But I think it makes sense to pay attention to it, if only to know where to go and download the white paper so you can tack that on as an appendix for your compliance reports. A better version of that. So I think it's so fascinating that we're getting to a point now where, I mean, even if the only answer you've got for the Mirai botnet as a small business is make sure that the surveillance devices that you've had in your shop for the last 10 years aren't part of it. Update your default passwords. You might be part of the Mirai botnet and not have any idea that you are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a good thing to check on too. You can find out if you as an MSP or MSSP find out whether or not there's any IoT devices that are physically on premises for any of your small businesses. That is the way that more than a couple of the red teams that I can think of right at the moment make their way into facilities. So I don't have anything else, I think, for the moment right now. Does anybody have anything for the good folk? I mean, we could definitely take a look at where did I throw this up here? There have been some questions about the regulatory freezes, I think, that got implemented on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. Like, look, we could have all the conversations we want about policy and the CSRB and its Cybersecurity Review Board and everything, but let's be honest, that's all at the federal level, and very few of us have the capacity to really process that. What we've got to do is figure out how some of these regulatory freezes affect small businesses. If you are a 30-person widget maker, you're trying to get through Boeing's ExoStar portal, right? You're trying to deliver them widgets in SeaTac, right? Or in Everett. The question here is, does CMMC, did it get frozen? Is it no longer relevant? My current interpretation of this regulatory freeze is that The businesses that are already subject to CMMC at the level at which they're at, level 1 or level 2, stay at that level until further conversation. That's the best interpretation I have that isn't a useless interpretation. Like, throw your hands in the air. It's payday for everybody. Can either of you disagree with me or shed any more light on it? What advice are we giving clients right now?
I mean, keep doing your questions. That's what we're doing. Do your Red Queen questions. We're not gonna turn anything off just because CMMC might not be valid anymore. Compliance and security, are vastly different things. So if you're trying to get compliant, great, but you also need to be secure. So yeah, nothing changes there.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm glad.
Yes.
Yeah. And
sorry, I was just going to say, I saw recently that I was going to say this earlier at the beginning of the webcast, but the S in compliance is for security. I saw that the
compliance. Yeah, I got you.
Exactly. Yeah, I would agree though. Like, continue moving in the direction. It is unlikely, I think, that these things will just go away. It will probably come back in some version or flavor. So keep doing what you're doing until better guidance comes along. Would be my advice to any small business. Yeah.
And the questions that you're being asked inside CMMC, if you've got a long history of complying with them, chances are very good that any kind of, there's not going to be a substitute for CMMC. I personally don't think that's going to happen. What's going to happen is that portions of CMMC are going to get reactivated. There'll be requirements will be up or downgraded based on where you sit in the supply chain, probably for DoD, and that they're just doing a regulatory review right now. There's not a way to let businesses that have had zero vetting whatsoever enter the Defense Department or federal government supply chain. So they're going to have something like it. And let's be honest, it's going to be basically all the exact same questions, maybe reordered, but that's okay. You don't have to worry about that with us. Your questions already get ordered and thrown back at you.
Yeah.
The issue I think most people need to recognize is that compliance and security are not something that matter inside a 90-day regulatory review period. If you're going for CMMC one day, it's going to matter that you've had it for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. That's your comparative and competitive advantage. And it's going to take you years anyway to get everything up to date and all the way, if you don't want to make it so burdensome and so business interrupting that you stop being able to collect revenue. I got nothing else. So, all right, folks, if you've got nothing, I think we might be able to wrap it up a little bit for the day. And I look forward to seeing everybody next week. We'll find out what fresh hell awaits us in the 3rd week or the 4th week of January. Sounds great. Absolutely. Hey, no, it's actually I'm going to do some motorcycle camping this weekend, probably, if I can manage to get out there. Yes, I am insane. So what do you got planned for this weekend, hopefully?
I'm actually taking my kids to Monster Jam in Washington.
It sounds
DC.
like it. Yeah.
So, yep, we're going to go watch Monster Trucks. That's going to be awesome. Super excited. Yep, my youngest daughter is just absolutely infatuated with them. So this is going to be a really good time.
You're a good dad. More Monster Trucks. Excellent work. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I think we're just going to cook and try to get a little relaxation around here. So any last thoughts before we kind of wrap it all up this week?
No, just
awesome.
See you next week.
See you next week, folks. It is, as always, been a total and complete pleasure. I am looking forward to it. And let's go ahead and wish you the best for this week and next. Stay safe, folks.
Bye, guys.